Thank you, and thank you for inviting me and considering me. Someone's obviously put me forward. My name's Richard Rieser. I'm a socialist. I've been involved in the trade union movement for more than 50 years and rejoined the Labour Party in 2015. I was in it in the 90s for a short time, but left for the reason that a lot of people left. I've stayed because I believe that we have to develop unity. A lot of people who joined with Jeremy as leader seem to have left or dropped off, but there is no alternative in terms of a parliamentary method to actually bring about equality and greater interests for all who are deprived. And I want to bring my experience to that. I've worked as a teacher and in the disability field for 35 years, as a teacher longer than that, although I'm now a part-timer doing consultancy. I also run the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum and the UK Disability History Month in its 11th year. And I believe it's really important that because of the democracy review, we have this place for the first time on the NEC. I've been asked a lot of questions about general policy. Interestingly enough, by various people, I've not been asked any questions on my position on disability, but that's what I'll be representing. It is very important. It's something we've missed a trick on as the Labour Party over a number of elections. I developed in the run-up to the last election, not with any national support, which should have been there, not for want of asking, disabled people for a Labour victory. We have to recognise 13.5 million disabled people in this country, 10 million of them voters, and we don't really relate to them as a group. So that we have to develop, and I want to champion the rights of disabled people on the NEC as a particular thing. So I want to obviously scrap universal credit and set up a national minimum income. I want to set up a national independent living service to cover the extra cost of living as a disabled person, not just a care service. Highlight the disastrous impact of the benefit system. And I know about that because I've sat on the lower first tier tribunal on PIP hearings for 5 years, and I've seen how distorted the government is in their evilness, I have to say, in trying to force people off benefits, leading to many hundreds of deaths, which we as a party haven't made much of and which we should have made much more of. Arguing for sufficient funding for disabled people's organisations. Without our organisations independent and run by ourselves, we cannot articulate the views of disabled people and we cannot develop the consciousness of disabled people.
Can you wind up now,
on
please?
Your four questions, just quickly, I'm for open selection. I would be in favour of more than 15 years for people to have the vote. I'm in favour of a 2030, but I think we have to do everything, particularly through local councils where we have power to accelerate that. And on BAME, I've been a strong anti-racist for all of my adult life, and I believe we have to do much more, including in areas where there are large numbers of BAME voters having black-only lists. The question of anti-Semitism in the party is a serious one, and I think it came, why it's come to a head is people not recognising Jewish people's right to a homeland and just going down the Free Palestine view. And I think we have to stick to the position of the party, which is for a two-state solution. And there were many, particularly around Jeremy, who didn't support that position, took the sort of leftist position, which has led to, and this idea that anti-Zionism is all right, but anti-Semitism isn't, and it's very difficult, it seems to me, to distinguish between the two. Coming from a Jewish background, though not practicing, having lost relatives in the Holocaust, I see that this is something that the party has to take much more seriously, and you can't just close off to what's going on. Certainly talking about intimidation, I found it incredibly intimidating when the Palestine motion went through conference, and if you were Jewish in that room, there was no way you could really feel anything other than alienated by a party that operated in that single issue way. And that single issue way is what has led, in my view, to much of the bullying and harassment that goes on in the party. We are not even-handed in the way that we approach issues, and we need to be. In terms of Europe, I think this was a major debacle. I feel that when the Labour Party was in with Theresa May negotiating, we should have called a special conference at that point and put forward a compromise position to the party at a special conference, which would have won a majority and kept Theresa May in power and Boris out, and then Labour would have come to power after that. And that was a major mistake, that it was treated like a joke rather than actually seeing how serious it was, because after all, Parliament had not voted for a referendum in all of that time during that Parliament. So there had to be some real politique, and I would support Keir Starmer in actually dealing with the real reality of being a leader of the opposition, and that you can't get all of the policies that are in our manifesto or anywhere else through in that situation. You have to go for what is achievable. And I think that Jeremy missed that, and we suffer the consequences from that. And I'm a great supporter of Jeremy, but nevertheless, there has to be an openness about discussing these things. So I would, if on the NEC, I would support Keir, but I would also ask Keir to actually lead a campaign in the party to bring in the 13.5 million disabled people. We are seen as an individual problem rather than a social oppression such as racism, sexism, homophobia. And therefore people are related to individually, and we ourselves see it in that way often. And the idea that we say we support the social model, there's been no training throughout the party on what that actually means. And as a result, we are not using our potential as a party of social justice. And that has to be the equation that Keir gets support when he supports fighting for social justice. Yeah. I'll take a slightly broader perspective. Obviously, my answer is no, we, as a Labour government, we shouldn't be involved in the export of arms, and we should be substituting new green technologies into the manufacturing sector that will be hit by that, of which we could be a world leader, and so there's no problem with that. But I think it's got more to do with the degeneration of the international rules-based system in the world, with particularly the men of the right and power who are doing everything they can to undermine the United Nations and the determination around the International Declaration of Human Rights that came out of the Second World War. And we have to actually have a much stronger UN supported by ourselves, Europe and other progressive forces across the world against the cutting down of this international cooperation. And it's no excuse to see that the spread of COVID is directly related to the position that has been taken against the World Health Organization by the Americans and others, which is leading to far more deaths than needed to happen. And so this international cooperation around things that we agree on, which would need to include banning arms, banning proliferation of nuclear arms, and actually banning them altogether, has to be part of the same question. But in the immediacy, because Britain is I think the third largest arms dealer in the world, a Labour government should take direct action on that and deal with it by substituting alternative green technologies. Thank you. Yeah, I'm standing really, I suppose, here in this particular thing for you to choose either George or me. Why should it be me? Well, I've been involved in the disability movement for 40 years. I got polio when I was a small child. I experienced school in a segregated situation. I became a teacher to challenge that. I've been a leader in developing inclusive education in this country, and was the person who got it into Labour Party policy by a reference back at conference and talking to the policy review. And I believe that it's really important that on an international scale, Labour plays its part as a progressive force in the world. And therefore my experience working at the UN, where I was the representative of disabled people in the UK to bring about the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and actually drafting that, and then being the representative at various UN meetings since then. And since then, I've taken that forward in working with the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum, and working with 450 million disabled people across the 54 countries of the Commonwealth. In the UK, I've led, after the Alliance for Inclusive Education, Disability Equality in Education, where we developed disability equality training, which is what changes people's mindset about disability. And clearly access is a key issue, but the party has to fund it, and it hasn't funded it in an adequate way. When I brought this up as the disabled officer in Islington North, that we needed to have the possibility, long before COVID, of Skype meetings at every meeting for those who couldn't get to meetings, which isn't just disabled people, but it's single parents and so on. Scorn was poured upon me by the secretary. Now he says, oh, these meetings, these Zoom meetings are wonderful. Perhaps we should always have them. Well, yeah, we should have always had them as long as the technology has been available. And we've been lagging behind as a party in that and so many other ways. Sign language interpreters, how does a small branch pay for that? There has to be an equalisation grant across the whole country. Those are the sorts of things I will fight for, and a real space for disabled people, and for there to be a disabled members conference where we can develop our own genuine policy. Thank you.